Nintendo has two very distinct and separate faces they could wear going into the 8th generation. The first would be that Nintendo is a hardware manufacturer that's also a software developer for their own hardware. The second is that Nintendo is a software developer that makes their own hardware to play their own games. Back in the third and fourth generation, the NES and Super NES days, Nintendo basically served as they acted. Their identity was a hardware developer. When you said you liked Nintendo, you were saying you liked the platform itself and everything that came with it. In the N64, GameCube, and the Wii days, really saying you liked Nintendo meant that you liked Nintendo as a software developer and bought Nintendo's hardware primarily to play Nintendo's software. Those are two very different things. And what Nintendo really is trying, I think they're trying to position themselves to act more as the provider of the platform and also make their own software. And there's the difference in that is sort of like with PlayStation with Sony. When you say you like PlayStation, you're not saying you like Sony's games. You may like Sony's games. You might not even necessarily care about Sony's games, but you like the platform as a whole. Same with Microsoft. Microsoft develops their own games. When you say you like the Xbox 360, you're not necessarily saying that you like Microsoft's games or buy the 360 for Microsoft's games. You buy into the platform. Whereas to a large extent, when you buy a Nintendo system in the last few generations, you're really saying you're buying into Nintendo's software. Whereas, like with the NES, you're buying the platform. When you say you buy Nintendo, you're buying the platform. And Nintendo, I think they're trying to move back into that and trying to provide a system that's relevant to everyone. Because to be relevant to everyone, it can't just be Nintendo software that people are buying into. And a very important way that they're doing this is you may notice that the system, their new system's name is Wii U. It's not Nintendo Wii U. It's just Wii U. As with Wii, the systems, like colloquially, we call it Nintendo Wii, but the system's name is just Wii. Whereas with Nintendo 64, Nintendo was right there in the name. Nintendo GameCube, the brand on the system and all the advertising, all the promotional material, it's Nintendo GameCube. Whereas Wii, and it's always just Wii. Whenever Nintendo brand system is just Wii, and all their promotional material and all their advertising and on the console itself, it's just named Wii. And I think what Nintendo is really trying to do is they're trying to create a brand sort of separate from Nintendo itself to serve as something that's a new identity that could be relevant to everyone. And Son of Mr. Peanut pointed this out to me in a recent video. He commented, and I sort of thought of this myself, but he's the one who really made me think about it in detail. Nintendo systems sort of have they sort of come in twos. We have, the NES and Super NES are a pair. The N64 and GameCube are a pair. The Wii and Wii U are going to be a pair. Like the NES and introduced the idea of just a Nintendo video game system. Then the Super NES expanded on that. Better hardware, better graphics. 2D based, mostly sprite based games, and enhancing that idea with the Super NES. Then Nintendo 64 introduced polygonal gaming and an analog control. Then GameCube took that to the next level. Better performance, better analog control, better controller, more adept to use to better exploring the idea of a polygonal 3D game console. Then we took the idea of motion controls and novel forms of input and trying to create a brand and a system that's relevant to not only the traditional gamers and the hardcore gamers, but to casual gamers and novices and newcomers. And Wii U is expanding on the idea of the Wii, trying to make something that's relevant to the casual that they've already brought in with the Wii, and really reaching out to the hardcore gamers who didn't necessarily find the Wii relevant to them, not just because of the whole image or the stereotype of Wii as being nothing but Wii Sports and Wii Fit, but just the fact that a lot of the games that those gamers were most interested in, just simply because of the Wii's horsepower or lack thereof, the definitive versions of the games they're most interested in just happen to be on other systems. So Nintendo is they're basically using Wii U to try to bring in a lot of developers of games who didn't dislike Nintendo, but just didn't find the Wii a suitable system to the experiences they wanted to create. So now we have developers such as, Ken Levine talking about how the Wii U is perfectly in line with the concepts of games that he's interested in creating, using Bioshock Infinite as an example. And this is in the interview that he did for Nintendo's Wii U reveal at E3 2011. So basically, Nintendo, they're trying to go back to being the provider of the platform and also make games for it, rather than Nintendo making the Nintendo system to play Nintendo's games on it. That's really, I think, possibly the biggest difference between the NES and Super NES days and nowadays in terms of how a Nintendo console is perceived by the gaming universe. And taking the name Nintendo out of the brand with Wii and with Wii U, and just consider the fact that before E3 2011, there were really strong rumors that Nintendo's new system would literally just be named Nintendo. And the fact that that's even plausible sort of shows that the pieces are in place for Nintendo to be setting themselves up to go back to being the provider of the platform and making games for it, rather than Nintendo carrying the system by themselves. Basically, that you're going to buy this new system as the platform and not just to buy the system to play Nintendo's games. So that's what I have to say about the two very different roles Nintendo could position themselves in with the Wii U. And thank you very much for watching.